Kalispera. Good evening. My name is Stratos Efthimiou, and I'm the Consul General of Greece in Boston. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It means a lot to us. I'm convinced that the Greek diaspora is a hidden gem, especially in the fields of technology and science. And through events like this one today, we are trying to connect Greece to our diaspora and to the Boston ecosystem. With Marina Hadjopoulos and Michael Bletsas, and together with a great team of volunteers, we've been building the Hellenic Innovation Network, a hub of investors, start-uppers, entrepreneurs, innovators. And at the same time, at the consulate, we have set up a task force working on the establishment of a non-stop flight from Boston to Athens. And we are optimistic, and I hope that very soon we will have some good news to share with you. So I would like to express my admiration to Nicholas Negroponte and my appreciation for his support on our networking efforts through his presence tonight. I'd like also to express my gratitude and thanks to Michael Bletsas for hosting us here and making this event possible. Michael Bletsas is the Director of Computing of the MIT Media Lab. He's a research scientist, an innovator, an inventor, a global thinker, and he has served in the past on the board of the Hellenic Telecommunications Organization, and he has been serving on many other boards of organizations which are trying to promote entrepreneurship and the technological advancement of Greece. So Michael was the first person I met when I came here in Boston 20 months ago, and he has always been extremely helpful, both to me, but most importantly to Greece and to the community here. Thanks to his time, his efforts, his precious advice, the consulate has improved its capabilities and its services to the citizens. So ευχαριστώ. Michael has worked very closely with Nicholas in a series of projects. Maybe the most emblematic was the one laptop per child. I think that there is something noble and visionary in this project, something which tells a lot about Nicholas's and Michaelis's values, supporting the democratization of technological literacy, promoting connectivity, placing technology at the service of humanity, combating technological inequalities. I think that these are some very praiseworthy initiatives and humanistic values. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Michael Bletsas and Nicholas Negroponte. Thank you.
I have the awkward privilege of welcoming and introducing somebody to the place that he built, but you know, that's life. Nicholas came to MIT in 1961, if I remember correctly, never left. I hope to be able to repeat that. I've only arrived here, though, in 1995. I arrived here because of Nicholas, not in any traditional way. I was walking and saw the cover of Wired magazine. It was the fall of '95. His face was on the cover, manipulated via photomosaics application that a student at the Media Lab had pioneered. And I wondered whether I should buy the magazine. I bought it. I learned about the Media Lab. At the last page, there was the job posting for my job, and the rest is history. So I would like to start with, what did I miss since I joined only in '95?
Well, first of all, I was Wired Magazine's initial funder, and as their primary funder, they had to put my picture on the magazine, and the advertisement for the job was free. When I came to MIT, which was indeed in 1961, I thought I would be an architect. And I went to architecture school, and over the period of 5 years, I fell in love with computers and realized that if I were to develop tools for architects, I would have far more influence than if I took the great statistical improbability of being a great star architect. I might influence 1 or 2 buildings or maybe a small part of a city. But if I worked on the tools, then I would not get any credit, but I could have a much bigger influence. And that was my personal rationale for moving to design, to computer-aided design, then to computer graphics, then to media in general, then to the Media Lab. That was the trajectory. And a great stroke of luck happened because I had started a laboratory that was part of the ARPA funding community, and we had a lot of very interesting research. And before flat displays existed, before a lot of the things that we take for granted, we sort of were inventing it in the early stages. And if you were to visit our lab back in the mid-'70s, late '70s, you would see things that looked and felt a little bit like the Media Lab. But the great piece of luck is that that laboratory was in the dead center between the office of the president and his chauffeur. So every day for lunch, the then president would walk through our lab to get to the elevator to go down where his chauffeur was parked. This was a man named Jerry Wiesner. And Jerry had so many important people visiting him because he was Jack Kennedy's science advisor. He was a very well-known global figure. And he would bring them always through our lab because we were very photogenic. You could come, you could touch things, you could see things. It was full color. It was very exciting. You could go through the lab in about 3 minutes and see things you've never seen before, which today might look and sound common, but at the time they were breathtaking. I remember showing people things and they would go, oh, they would suck in and they would say, no, you know. So it was a great conversation piece for him, and it was a great opportunity for me. And we got to know each other, and he told me one day, he said, I'm going to retire as president, but I'm not going to become chairman, because usually the president becomes chairman, the chairman becomes chairman emeritus, everybody moves up one. He said, I'm going to go back and do research. But there's no lab. There's no lab I want to be in. And I guess I was quick enough, and I said, Jerry, I'll build you a lab. And that's literally what happened. That's how the Media Lab got started. And we became very good friends, and we raised money to build the first building, and we put in all the bits and pieces. But that's actually the real story. And the other thing that happened, which was a little bit of let me call it luck, I was at the time the academic head of all the arts activities at MIT, which were considered the sissy activities at the Institute. Photography, film, video, environmental art, computer music, computer animation. I mean, come on. And this was back in the early 1980s, and I had two very, very dear personal friends who were considered absolute misfits. One was Marvin Minsky, and the other was Seymour Papert. And that group, with that group, we formed the Media Lab, and we were outcasts. When I went to see the provost at the time and said, I want to bring Seymour Papert into the Media Lab, I expected all sorts of resistance. And he said, be my guest. Take him. Absolutely. Thank you. Take him. And so we were the refuse of the Institute. And Jerry Wiesner was our, sort of our, not our mascot, but he was our leader and gave us enormous amount of shelter and protection. And so the years you missed were the years where we had to make ourselves respectable and had to be sort of the place people aspired to come to as faculty, as students. And it happened over the first, certainly the lab was 10 years old when you came. It used those 10 years coincident with a lot of things suddenly happening. Personal computers emerged, which they hadn't before. Telecommunications was broken up and divested, and people were, and media companies suddenly realized that they had to become digital, and the digital world was going to change them. So we were also in the right place in the right time, not just because we were between Jerry Wiesner's office and his chauffeur, but because the digital world was nascent, was just exploding. And it wasn't going to be a scientific and technological revolution. It would be driven by the applications and the creative users. That's a long answer, but that's sort of what was going on till you got here. And then everything changed and went downhill since.
Well, not quite. I think it took us another 10 years. My first 10 years, I remember that we sort of had to fight within MIT to get respected, maybe. We were still considered, the lunatic fringe, but we had all the acceptance from the outside world and from our companies, our member companies, our sponsors. So I think everybody was looking at us. And then we have the third decade where we really became the establishment, and now we get copied by MIT somehow. And I don't know, it's a little bit uncomfortable.
It's never fun to be the establishment.
No.
No, you don't want to be.
And now MIT has this effort called the College of Computing. It's been forming as we speak. Nobody knows exactly what final form it will take, but it seems to me like it is the Media Lab only trying to have a wider application domain.
It's not just because they're copying what we did, it's also because the times have changed. And what's they are doing now is very commensurate with the times. 35 years ago, it was not. It was very, very different. And so while I'd like to think that everybody's copying us because they understood, they're also benefiting from social and economic movements that have changed the nature. For better and worse, we can talk about both, but they've changed the nature of computation. And the good news is that it's vibrant. It's the sort of things we might hear later. It's sort of entrepreneurial. The bad news is that I think in about 20 years, I'm not sure I'm going to be here in 20 years, but most of you will be. And I think we're going to sense a drought, that the sharing of big early stage ideas has gone downhill. It's gone downhill because companies are much more sort of internal. A company like Apple Computer has given nothing back to science from the day it was founded. Think about it for a second. Nothing. Not a paper, not a meeting, not anything. Microsoft, which I don't respect that much as a company, but I respect the fact that they're much more open. They do research. But in general, there's a sort of clamming up. It's not like Bell Laboratories was 40 years ago. Even IBM, a very singular company, was very generous with its research in ways that are not matched today. And then the entrepreneurial startup phenomenon is creating sort of little microcosms where their investors tell them you've got to keep things proprietary and secret. So that's happening. And if you look at from the outside, I think we're going to see a deficit in 10, 20 years, but we'll fix that. In other areas, things may change, but the vibrancy of computers and telecommunications today may get hurt by the degree of sort of closed, not public information over a longer term. But what people have done is they have realized, and you take this for granted, it maybe is not mentioned this way, that computers are like photography. If you think back to the history of photography and cinema, the world of photography was invented by photographers. It was invented by people who wanted faster speed, or they wanted color, or they wanted motion. And most of the people pushing in that world were the creative users wanting it to do a little bit more than it was doing. They wanted people not to have to stand like robots for 30 seconds and that kind of push has happened in computers. And the people that push the boundaries are the people in computer music, cinematography, special effects, education, so on. And that's pretty exciting, because those are not just the domains of startups, but they're also intellectual domains that are pushing us in ways that aren't just pushed if the only imperative is a scientific one. And so scientific imperatives, technical imperatives, tend to be more incremental. And so you accomplish something, and certain fields are even extremely incremental, like semiconductors, and you achieve a certain sort of line width, and then you go for a harder one, and then a harder one, and a harder one. And that's wonderful and extraordinary stuff, but it is not the same as many people in many applications pushing in many different directions. So today, where the original Media Lab purpose, which was to have the creative users be the inventors, isn't really mission accomplished, but it's after 35 years. I mean, you can only tell the story so long, and things do happen and other departments do emerge. So today what the Media Lab does is it becomes more general purpose place for misfits. I ran a couple of searches before I retired a year and a half ago, and I put the word misfit in the first sentence, which is these advertisements are taken very seriously. They're read by the Institute, this is okay. And I would say, if you're a misfit, apply here. And then even further down, I said, if you can get a faculty position anywhere else, take it, okay? Because this is the place you come if you can't get a faculty position elsewhere. So that's not the only requirement, but we really want to be a place where the people who come are the people who are in some way idiosyncratic. And it's happened a few times, not many, it's happened 4 times to be precise, where somebody comes in to us, though they should have been accepted by some other department, but they come in through us, then they work on their whatever for 7 years, which is rough when you come up for tenure, and the field that they should have come in is moved as well, maybe because of or partly because of their work, and then they get tenure in that department. I think that's wonderful. And then we have an empty slot, we bring somebody else and do it over again. It's not generally agreed that that's a great model, but I thought it was. And it hasn't happened that often, but the point is that it's a nice way to admit faculty, get them to do things that they might not be able to do otherwise, and then for them to go off and, in some sense, infiltrate the institute with people that are extraordinarily imaginative. And one of the most recent hires sent me emails, said, I've been turned down from Harvard, I've been turned down from Stanford, and I've been turned down by MIT's biology department. And I said, come see me, you've got the perfect background. And we had lunch, and he actually was hired and is a star. And the departments that turned him down just wish so much that they hadn't. And it doesn't give me joy that they're now begging for that person's presence and attention. What gives me joy is that person had an opportunity to really do what they thought was important, which happened to be different than the commonly accepted view of the world in that field. In this case, it was CRISPR, and it was biotech, which is not something I ever imagined. We're designing mice in this building. I never thought, when Jerry Wiesner walked through my lab away to the chauffeur, we didn't have mice in the lab. Well, we might have had mice for other reasons, but we weren't designing them. And now we're designing them, and I thought, wow, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of it at the time, but I'm very proud of it now. And it's in keeping, and it makes sense. But if I told you at the beginning, and you asked me to give a talk, and I say, we have a mouse design program, and here's what our mice do, and why we have genetically modified them, and what the purpose is, and then ask you, are these real mice, or are they artificial, are they alive, are they animal, are they little computers? But they're mice. And I find that emblematic of what the Media Lab is currently, that's today. And who knows what it'll be 10 years from now.
We are going through an inflection point, it seems, though, in computing. Moore's law, for all practical purposes, is dead. The current deep learning, machine learning explosion is giving birth to a lot of new architectural thinking. I think there is going to be a lot more languages, architectures to deal with all this deluge of data that we're generating at an exponentially increasing pace. However, what I also see at the lab is that we are expanding to many more areas. Where do you think that there are some benefits in clustering people to work together? I think that's what we have missed in the recent years. We have people that are their own group. They don't work with other groups. That has been my biggest sort of... I remember people working together. I remember when we had Members Week, people were building demos together to impress people. Now every group is on its own. And part of it has to do with the fact that we have expanded a lot. Don't you think that we should try to cluster a little bit?
Well, to some degree, every group is almost the size of what the whole lab was.
Yeah,
so
to a certain extent.
There are now 800 people. So 800 people don't operate the way 100. When you came, if we were 100, I'd be surprised, maybe 100.
We're 110.
We were 110, okay. So 110 when you arrive, and we're 800 and something today. It's a different, you can't run it like an orchestra. You're not on the podium conducting, and people aren't practicing for a demo week. everybody's their own little jazz band, and they happen, and it's a very different way of structuring it. When I was running the Media Lab, we did not have staff meetings. We did not have, nobody made a PowerPoint presentation where somebody evaluated it. Never a thumbs up, thumbs down. It was not operated that way. And when somebody would ask me, well, how do you figure out? And the answer is history will figure it out. And when the one time that any judgment is made, it's on tenure. And tenure is a decision that people do agonize over, and they do meet a lot over. And there's a lot of sort of you're making up for lost time in the staff meeting sense. But the truth is, you get tenure for one reason. And it's people in the academic world and at MIT might kill me for saying this, but you get it for fame. Are you famous? Does the world know about your work? Have you changed how people think? Have you affected publications? Have you affected the existence of companies, academic departments, institutions, at a global level? You can't just do it at a national or domestic level. It has to be at the global scale. And if your publications aren't coming out in multiple languages, that's a negative. And you sort of look at it that way. And it's a sort of odd thing to say, because here we are so informal the way we admit people, and then you have this one, call it an inflection point, which, if I could change anything in the academic world, is I would get rid of tenure. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's outdated. But given that you have to play by those rules at the institutional level, we do, and that is a very specific point in a person's career. And, that is the only time we do what might be thought of as a more rigorous approach to management or to how you run an operation. Our former CFO is in the room, so he's going to smile when he hears this. But I didn't even want budgets. The idea that somebody would have a budget, wow, what a stupid idea. Because then you might want to spend it at the end of the year if you had money left over. Or you might not want to spend money on something that was really important and creative because it wasn't in your damn budget. So it worked a little bit that way. It's changed now, partly because the size is such that it has to. And we're doing fine with the change. No complaints.
We learned that actually budgets have some utility, the hard way, around 2000. But let's leave that decade behind us. It was, we learned why budgets are important. Okay. Year is 2005. Actually, year is 2004. And you are testing the idea. We are in Greece together again in some stupid World Congress on Information Technology. Anyway, and you test the idea of the one laptop per child. Probably the most interesting thing I've ever worked in my life. What came out of it, in your opinion? What are the main things that we should be proud about it?
Well, we should be proud of something that almost nobody knows. No press was written about it, or no stories about it. And I don't know how much you and I have talked about it. But when we started One Laptop Per Child, the name of which says the story, we decided to build a very, very low-cost, child-centric machine that had many properties that I'm still very proud of today. And we were able to distribute almost 3 million of them in the first, there was a commitment for 3 million like in the first year. It took a while to do them, but what was important was the number 3 million. Not because 3 is better than 4 or 2, but because it was a relatively big number, and there was a factory on mainland China, and there was a design team in Taiwan. You could push the button and get 100,000 laptops per week. And if you really pushed the button hard, you could get 200,000 per week, which was relatively significant number. Enough of them had been delivered that we had a certain credibility. And at the time, it was Brazil. It was at least I was dedicating a lot of time to Brazil. And it was when President Lula was the president. And I said to him, because he was going to buy 1 million laptops, and you don't say, I like Michalis, Bletsas, and Nicholas Negroponte, so here's an order for 1 million laptops. You have to write a tender, and there's a bid process, and all the things. I said to him, let us help you write the tender. And we'll bid on it. I'm not designing it for ourselves, but what we'll do is we'll publish the price in the newspapers. We'll publish the price that we are going to bid 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the tender is due, which is not normal because you usually do that in great secret. Sort of the cheapest one it wins. In the case of Brazil, it's always the cheapest. There are no other. It's always the money. So we published our price, which, as I recollect, was $179 because it included service and spare parts and other things. And the winner, the person who got the order for 1 million laptops, won it for $180, $1 more. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful way to get laptops into the hands of kids. We didn't need to build them, and we didn't need to sell any, and it didn't make any difference, in some sense, whose laptop. Ours was better, but still. And so this happened again and again and again, and we kept publishing the laptops. And it's not clear how many got into kids' hands as a consequence of this. Was it 10 million or 20 million? I don't know. I've heard much higher estimates. But that was the secret. That was what made it, in some sense, far more interesting, because you didn't really have to sell laptops. Now, there was a group already within 1 laptop per child who were treating it a little bit too much like a business, but it was still, as a general ethos, I think, a very important one. And so I look back at that with great fondness, and hindsight has been very kind to the project, because at the time it was highly criticized, but now stories I read about it and people talking about it in hindsight do it with far more affection today than they had 15 years ago, that's for sure. But that's okay. It had its effect, and I put into my news alert the phrase 1 laptop per child, and I get 3 or 4 news stories a day. And those stories are clearly not about our laptop, but just the idea. And it's stories not from the United States, it's stories from all over the world. And again, as a concept, I'm very proud of it. And you don't have to do it yourself all the time. And I think that was a key result.
It was actually an exercise in finding the right balance. I mean, we had to do enough.
You had to do the first 3 million,
yes.
so you had credibility.
You have to do enough so that you get credibility, yeah. But afterwards you didn't have to build them anymore. The interesting thing is that, remember, when we had our initial discussions, you were affected by your efforts in Cambodia. Getting internet to that school was it was quite straightforward. Back then, the laptops were the expensive part. It seems that we have gone the other way around right now. Devices are getting to be affordable. Not the devices that I would like to have, but anyway, I mean, people seem to be focusing on tablets these days, but internet penetration has stopped.
Yeah, it's worse.
It has slowed down a lot.
Yeah.
And not only has slowed down a lot, but people have completely missed what is the internet. I think most people think that the internet is Facebook and Twitter and social media these days, where most of the people get most of their content through these days. And it's quite dystopian already. I never thought that I would say that, spending all of my life, promoting internet access, and then you promote internet access so that people can get to Facebook.
Well, I'd be less gloomy about that because, if you really gave people internet access, I think you would find children, young children particularly, would go places that we haven't really appreciated, and older children, sort of young adults and people in their 20s and early 30s, are sort of running away from Facebook like I've never seen before. I don't know too many 27, 28-year-olds on Facebook anymore. Most of them seem to have left. The part that I am concerned about is that so many people have made so much money on telecommunications. And I don't mean just shareholders, I mean just people who have done telecommunications, particularly in the developed world. Go look at who are the 10 richest people in Africa, and 9 of them made it in telecommunications. Look at the 100 richest people in the world who, now there's some older industries in there, but half of them made it directly or indirectly in telecommunications. A very lucrative commercial opportunity. And at the same time, it's a civic opportunity. It's sort of where the future of learning is. It's where you can actually do things that would be more in what I would consider part of human rights doctrine rather than sort of entrepreneurship and building another system that we're going to measure by average revenue per user. And that's not happening fast enough. People like the United Nations and its various subsidiaries are basically voices for industry. They are not voices for education, human rights, elevating the world. They really are, they deeply believe and promote the private sector, which has its enormous purposes obvious to everybody in this room, but there's a civic side that has been forgotten. And there's certain things you do as part of a society that make the whole society better. And I think personally that telecommunications is moving from one side of that equation to the other. And that the side that has to do with, I would call, making civic society better is losing ground at the moment. It's just not getting the support it should get. In the United States, for example, there are even some states passing laws against cities providing free Wi-Fi for their citizens. That's shameless. If a city wants to provide free Wi-Fi for its citizens, good for them. It's like a park, it's like a library, it's part of that. And to actually create laws that make that not possible seems to me, just wrong-minded. And I can give other examples, but I'd like to see more on the civic side, especially in the developing world.
We are here be followed by the representatives from 5 Greek startups. You have been, most people don't realize, but you have been an extremely successful overall, given your life track record, investor, very early investor, like pre-alpha,
Yeah, it depends how you measure success. Don't do what I do, okay? The net of my whole life of investing is zero. At least it's not negative. But it's, I've invested in 60 or 70 companies personally or as part of a little group. And I would say less than 1 in 20 have been remotely successful. So those are very bad batting averages. But on the other hand, it was very exciting. And for me, I found it, that it was the space between the Media Lab and industry. Our sponsors were big companies. Our students and faculty were doing very initial research. So this was a taste of the space in between. And I would fund things like Segway. There's a stupid idea. And it wasn't a stupid idea, but the person who invented it did it, in a way that wasn't so good. But, it was well known. If you graduated from the Media Lab, you could come into my office and in 5 minutes walk out with $50,000. And, you do that 20 times, and it sort of adds up to real money. And then you do well in something that lets the next 20 people come in and ask for $50,000. And so it was a little bit of a self-generating process where I only made money twice in my life. Once, believe it or not, on Wired magazine. It turned out to be very successful, and once on a Chinese startup that became a pretty big web provider or internet provider in China. So they sort of finance the other things. But it was wonderful to do it. I don't regret it at all. And what I learned is, I learned it too late. If your measure is economic success, which was sort of not mine was much more into, the quality of the idea. So I was a terrible, you didn't want to give me your money to invest because I was really interested in the ideas. But if you were just interested in making money and being successful in that sense, you could spot the person independent of the idea. That the person, the winners, if you will, in that sense, were totally identified, independent of their idea. And I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. And I ran into it recently. A couple of Harvard students came with an idea. And it almost didn't matter what they're doing. And in fact, what they're doing isn't so interesting and important, but they're doing very well. So it's kind of funny, because we spend so much time on the idea, which I did for a different reason. I loved the ideas. And in the end, it's the people. It's almost only the people, which is partly the ability to present it, of course, because that has a certain, sort of charm, and the person's energetic, and how they're saying it. And you say, oh, that's passionate, and they really. So that helps, but that doesn't do everything. But it's important, and it's relatively predictable. So
I was in Greece recently speaking to young colleagues of mine at the student conference for electrical engineers, and people asked me whether they should go out and do a startup or whether they should go and work for a big company. And they were very disappointed because I told them that, look, if you can find a job in a big company, take it. Go out, learn how to work with others, unless you feel very strongly about your idea. You're not going to find it, and a lot of you are doing startups right now just because you have nothing else to do. And that's not the best idea either. So I find always myself in this very strange position, because I have to support a different set of things here, and the moment I step off the airplane in Greece, I have to switch 180 degrees, not 360, as somebody said, and support completely different things, almost exactly the opposite. I've heard you many times supporting civic causes and motivating people or to go and take jobs in the public sector and help not be so, entrepreneurial lately. And it's a very interesting, we discussed it a lot with Marina and Strato about this because we have Greek startups here. I believe we have the capabilities and we have the materials and the people and the knowledge to do something similar to what the Israelis did, maybe not in that scale, but follow a very similar model in actually, move forward despite our political instability and be outwards looking and be extroverts when we are trying to sell. I told them that the worst thing that they can do is try to sell to the Greek government to begin with and to the Greek market. Second, that's the worst thing that can happen to a company because you tend to develop skills that are not really needed outside of, at least in the Western world. They might be needed somewhere else, but not in the Western world. What would your take be for these people who are here trying to, work with their ideas, having developed their first versions of their products, trying to do something different in Greece that's quite common here, though?
Well, what Michalis is referring to is for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been very negative about startups. And I've been negative because I thought they were sucking big thinking out of the community, whether it's corporate or academic, and that I saw very smart people who discovered the cost of entry was low and a girlfriend and boyfriend could work at home after things and develop an app and a company or their friends, and it was kind of cool, and you didn't report to anybody, and you had but as that developed, and as soon as you got an investor, some angel investor, the new F word is focus. So you take a predominantly small idea, because they tend to be very small ideas, and you make it smaller through focus. And then this small idea, if it succeeds along a certain dimension, and maybe a company will buy you because they want you and your skills, but when a company buys you, then they lock up the intellectual property. So from my point of view, just looking at what's going on, you see a lot of the basic energy getting either locked up or made too small. And I think we're going to feel that deficit, as I said before, in about 20 years. Now, when I look at this, I have no idea what the four companies are going to present, 6 companies? I have no idea what they're going to present. So excuse me if I insult one of you. But if the only reason you're doing it is to make money, then go work for a big company. You've got to be in love with the idea. And if it's doing someone else's laundry or delivering their pizzas, screw it. We don't need another one of those. But we need some really, if you've got an idea, and it doesn't have to be absolutely, but it's still got to be an idea. And that's my, take. And, there are certain things that are very successful economically, which I don't consider meet the threshold of what I would call an idea.
Nicholas, what is the last startup that you have seen that has really inspired you?
Inspired me. It hasn't recently been the startup as much as the people. You know, they come in and this particular duo, which whom I invested in from Harvard, have started a company called Whoop, WHOOP, which do a wristband for high-end athletes that figures out whether you're about to die or not. I mean, it does all sorts of things. You know, is that an important, it's a crowded field they're doing very well, very well. And the guys who came in, one was a dropout from Harvard, a sophomore, and the other had finished, very polished, sort of intellectually, sort of, the other one was, and I said, Jesus, I've seen this picture before. I've seen this movie before. And it just reminded me of Steve Jobs and Wozniak. It was Steve and Woz. And I said, boy, I'm seeing this again. And the two of them they're together, they're still doing it. One is the techie writing science papers, developing, the other is out selling it, financing it, doing all the. And it was just a duo that I saw. Now, am I interested in the wristbands? But I thought they were cool. I'll have to think of a idea that I really fell in love with. But you get a little jaded because people don't, you know, you think you've seen them all. That's why you never want to sign a non-disclosure agreement, not because you want to disclose someone else's material, but because you've seen so much. You sign a non-disclosure agreement and somebody shows you what you've already seen before 5 times. You're in a very awkward position. But I'll think of one.
And with that, I think we can be, very prompt Greeks. Should we take some questions or should we move? We should take some questions if there are some questions.
So when I started working in this space, the kind of ideas would excite me a lot, but then you kind of get to a phase where you might listen to 100 ideas per week and everyone's really excited about them. Do you find that you also kind of get desensitized by new ideas? I mean, I just made me think of that when Marina asked you the question and you struggled to find like something that excited you. Do you think that happens or are they just not such good ideas after all?
You know, it's a little bit like admitting students at MIT. I've been doing it for over 50 years. And you get a really extraordinary pool of students, and then you interview a certain number who are extraordinary. And after about the 30th year, you feel you've seen all shapes, kinds of students, and the next one comes through who's brilliant. There's no question, but it kind of comes together. Now, do you find one or two that sort of go pop, and they less and less, statistically less. It's not because students are getting worse; they're actually getting better, if anything, because you have a wider pool and longer education and a bigger reach, and especially, don't get me talking about China, but especially from China, we get extraordinary students from China. And you say, well, they don't know how to think, they're robotic, that's rote, they haven't learned this, and not at all. One of the greatest companies in our world is Huawei. And may Trump remember that, because it's an extraordinary company doing the most advanced research, way beyond anything that's happening here in the United States. So so you see little blips and things, but it does iron out after a while.
I will take a shot at that also, because after being for so many years here and me being an engineer, you get desensitized about the ideas themselves. I mean, the best idea that I remember, the last idea that really, really excited me was when he called me and announced that let's go and build a laptop. Doesn't sound like a great idea, but the way you put it, it was very powerful, and that's what carried us along. But I'm a big Edison fan. in the sense that, at the end of the day, it's 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. I mean, you really have to put the work in there, and unless you have passion for your idea, you are not going to put the work in there.
I'll give you an example. I thought of one. A really exciting idea, one that I just fell in love with. Totally unfundable, and the particular person wasn't fundable, and so on and so forth. But it was the exact opposite. And this person wanted to change the color of water. Because if you change the color of water just a slight bit, so it reflects more sun, you can drop the temperature of the Earth by 1 or 2 degrees, depending how much you change the color of water. Because water is black. When you look at satellite images, it's not blue or transparent, it's black. And if you could change it to slightly off black, the temperature of the planet would go down by 1 degree or 2. So I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. And it has a Greek aspect to it. He wanted to pay the Greek ship owners to make bigger wakes. So when their ships went through the sea, they would make more turbulence, so the wake would go out further and last longer and reflect more sunlight and lower by 1 or 2 nano degrees that you could, pay people. And I thought that was pretty interesting, but it's not a fundable idea.
You want some wood?
Sure, if it's...
Daphne.
So in support of the segue to the next section, Michalis, you mentioned using the Israeli model. So you mentioned some of the similarities to Greece, like we are the brightest, they are the brightest.
Yeah.
and many others. What about the differences? What would be obstacles to using Israel as a model?
2 main obstacles. One is that we don't have the sense of urgency. We are not threatened. Or we think we are not. We think we are not. We don't have their sense of urgency. And we don't know how to work together very well. Because of their peculiar situations, they all have to go to the army. I work a lot with Israeli cybersecurity companies who have made Boston their launchpad for the US. And all of them are teams that were put together during their army years. So there you learn how to work together, because if one screws up, everybody feels the circumstances and it's pretty serious. So it's not the right way, and I don't wish Greece to ever have these situations. However, we are at a very difficult point right now. We are at a point where if we don't make a leap forward institutionally in the next 5 years, we will be stuck at the current situation. I mean, it will be a very nice place to go for a vacation, and that's about it. So the next 4 or 5 years will be extremely crucial for the future of Greece, and unfortunately, I don't see that kind of urgency. Another big difference, the Israeli universities are good and they are getting better. Our universities had pockets of excellence, and we are losing them and we are becoming worse right now. So we have, even if we don't understand it, we do have a survival issue in front of us if we want to remain an advanced Western society and democracy. And we really have to do everything that we can in our hands to get out of that. The next few years are going to be extremely crucial. And with that, big applause for Nicholas Negroponte.
I'm Marina Hatsopoulos. Welcome. So happy to have you here. Thank you to Michalis Bletsas for hosting us here today and giving us such an amazing chat with Nicholas Negroponte. I was a co-founder of one of the early leaders of 3D printing, which came out of MIT, actually, quite a few years ago. With the support of the Consul General of Greece in Boston, Mr. Stratos Efthimiou, we have a group which was formerly called the MIT Enterprise Forum Greece Diaspora Council, but we decided that was too long, and so we are now calling it the Hellenic Innovation Network. And you will all be receiving information in the coming months about a platform that we're building to help connect entrepreneurs coming out of Greece who want to expand to the US with all of you, with this rich network here of Greeks and Greek friends, friends of Greece, who want to help those startups to grow and to succeed. Basil Vetas, could you please stand up, is working along with Natasha Bornhorst, who is here also, on this platform. And so this will allow people to connect virtually and then ideally to connect through the events that we plan here twice a year. This is our 7th event. So thank you for being here. The goal is to create the network. So if you're wearing a red sticker, look for people with green stickers and vice versa. What we really want to encourage is after you've heard the speakers, if there's a way that you can help someone who spoke up here or who you meet, please help them find a connection, whether it's a customer, a partner, a distributor, investor, whatever it is. This network is what can be so powerful to helping a startup succeed. I also want to thank Stamati Sastra for the stickers, so if you'll stand, thank you. And before we get to the pitches, which we will do very quickly, Vasilis Papakonstantinou from MIT Enterprise Forum Greece will tell you a little bit about the organization.
Hi, Marina. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here and work with the Greek Consulate in co-organizing this event, which is meant to build bridges between the Greek tech ecosystem and the global diaspora. MIT Enterprise Forum started obviously from MIT here, and the Greek chapter focuses exclusively on startups, technology-driven startups. We are very keen in helping, especially ventures coming out of the Greek research laboratories. The programs that we organize, and I had the pleasure of having them all the time up there, so I'm sure you've read them, are grouped in 4 categories that are designed to address the needs of the different focus groups that we have. The events like this one are meant to inspire and connect. Events like the hands-on workshop that we are planning on July 1st, the Lab to Market, are designed to help aspiring entrepreneurs learn the opportunities and the challenges they're going to face. And the Tech Insider Club is an effort to help business executives and investors in Greece to understand technology better so they can have more efficient discussions with technology startups. The most important program is the the Greek startup competition that actually is running right now, and I don't think it's anyway. It's running for the 5th year, and including this cohort, we have accelerated more than 110 startups. Some of them, like Artisafe, you're going to hear about in a minute, are leading the way in the technology transfer space. This year, we introduced, in addition to the general track that we had for the previous years, this year we had a new track focusing on mobility and energy that is exclusively sponsored by the Hellenic Petroleum, and we plan to expand into new areas. If you happen to be in Athens on July 2nd, you're welcome to join the finals ceremony where you're going to meet the finalists of this year, hear the pitches, and celebrate the winners. Back in 2015, when we announced the first finals of the first competition, we had a referendum, and then capital controls were imposed. This year, when we announced this year's finals, the Greek government decided to announce snap elections. So first time coincidence, second time signal. So please follow our social media to learn more about what we're doing. And if you're interested to become more involved, like a mentor or a judge or a sponsor, please come find me afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so one quick thing to let you know about what's happening in Greece by way of context, because the landscape has changed dramatically over the last year. The European Investment Fund a year ago committed 320 million euros for venture funds investing in Greek startups. And so that has really changed the landscape and brought many more interesting startups to the fore. I want to let you know we're going to have all of our 6 presenters present one after another, boom, 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 very quickly, and we will do a Q&A at the end. So save your questions for after. So without further ado, Bill Janukos from Pineapple. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Kalispera. Unfortunately for me, Nicholas Negroponte is going to hate my app idea. We're building a pizza and laundry delivery service combined. Just kidding. So my name is Bill Janukos. A little bit different than the rest of the presenters. My story is one of a Greek American who's been a technologist for the last 20 years in the Boston area. And I have very deep Greek roots. I inherited a company or a team out of Israel about 15 years ago. And one of the things that resonated with me was, why is this working so well in Israel? Why can't we do the same thing in Greece? And my last company that I created was a company called Trumpet. Trumpet was an augmented reality company that leveraged messaging to create really immersive experiences. And while we were Boston-based, we actually built our entire iOS team out of Athens. This was a great success for us. It leveraged the deep talent pool that we were able to get in Greece, plus economically it was fantastic. And I felt civic responsibility to build this team out of Athens. We ended up selling this company to Wayfair, which is the largest technology company in Boston. And we had built such a great team that all 3 of our iOS engineers were offered full-time employment in the German offices. And one of them was actually asked to be the head of Wayfair Mobile, which was a great honor and highly rewarded position. Unfortunately, no Greek wanted to go move to Berlin. The weather wasn't as good as it was in Mykonos in the summer. So we have a really close bond with that team, and we're really excited to continue. After spending 2 years at Wayfair, I wanted to solve a personal mission, and the mission that we wanted to solve was around improving health and wellness outcomes. So my last co-founder at Trumpet, Carl Neiman, and I had a really passion about trying to improve these outcomes. Our vision is that we think healthcare for non-critical conditions is broken today in the United States. We lack access and time to medical professionals. We don't have access to neither physicians, and the pharmacists working at CVS are not really available to help us out throughout the store. So what we're doing is we're building an e-commerce platform that allows you, leveraging augmented artificial intelligence, that allows you to get a custom personalized health and wellness solution. So we help you through the advice phase to the buy phase to the support phase of the company. We're in a unique position today. We ended up finalizing our first seed round last week. We ended up raising 3.5 million. Today, I'm here to ask for help around making connections in Greece. We are looking for full stack engineers that could help us out, but we're also building a custom call center that's going to be staffed by pharmacists and medical professionals. We think this is going to be a real differentiator for us, and we're looking to make connections there with both pharmacists and call center providers like Teleperformance. Thank you.
So, hi everybody. Marina, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I'm Michael Vlastarakis, Michalis in Greek. I'm head in marketing communications of Eurobank, actually, but I'm here to talk to you about EGG, Enter, Grow, Go. So, a few words about Eurobank. I'm realizing that of the number of people when I joined, it was a startup. We started 50 people. Today we are more than 13,000. Anyway, it's one of the most dynamic banks in Southeastern Europe, and we claim as one of the most innovative. In the past, we really helped to transform the Greek banking system, and our aspiration is now to help transform the Greek economy. But I'm here, as I told you, to talk to you today about egg. So we decided to make an impact back at the peak of the Greek crisis 6 years ago, back in 2012, 2013, and do something to help the young people, and especially those who left massively the country. So it was an initiative against brain drain, and we are happy that we did something against it till today. So actually we run an incubator and an accelerator for 6 years. The footprint so far is more than 700 entrepreneurs, more than 100 companies operating out there. They have raised, 40 of them have raised some funds, more than 10 million, which actually for Greece is quite an important amount. And we recently launched a scale-up platform for the more mature startups, mainly trying to connect them, to connect the research, which we believe that is at high standards in Greece, to markets and investors. Our next initiative is a crowd equity platform and crowdfunding equity platform. And actually the aspiration there is for promising startups to give them access to a broader investor base, not only in Greece, but internationally as well. So why we're here? Why am I here? For 2 reasons. One is I believe that Greek academia is of really high standards. I really believe that there are skills there in this tiny country, which had a dramatic crisis over the last years, but skills are there. And either out of necessity or really out of unique skills, they became extrovert recently. So I believe it's high time to connect these skills to international investors and not only the local ones. What we're trying to do is to connect these people, to connect these teams with the international opportunities. So either investors, incubators, accelerators, and especially the US ones are of top scale. And of course, the MIT startup ecosystem, which is one of the best all over the world. Greek academia is strong. Greek academia is strong even in this country. Some statistics say that relative to our size, we might be either the first or the second strongest academia in this country, in these universities, not back in the small, tiny Greece. The second reason I'm here is actually one of very good examples of what we're trying to do there is Herado. You're going to listen to Herado in the next minutes, and Herado is one of the examples we're trying to help back there. There are others in other fields. We are industry agnostic so far, and I'm here to listen from anybody who is really interested what kind of deal flow you might be interested in. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Good evening from me as well. I'm Marianthi Frangopoulou, CEO of Herado. We have created Herado with the ambition to be able to change the game in radiation protection applications. This may sound a little bit of exaggeration, but I can assure you that it's not, and I will explain myself. Our system, Herado system, has accepted to be uploaded on the historical mission on Moon with Orion, NASA's vehicle, one of the most grandiose projects of NASA. This development demonstrates the efficiency of our team, as well as the innovation of our system and the quality of our system. Our vision is to be able to transfer the space know-how to the Earth applications and to the better quality of life and radiation protection of the people. We manufacture and sell global unique active personal dosimeters for medical, aviation, defense, nuclear power plants, security, cargo, oil, gas, mine, homeland security. wherever there is a radiation. Today, dosimeters are measuring only one type of radiation, and they usually are passive, so they cannot measure in real time. The active dosimeters are very expensive. So our solution, Gerardo solution, is our dosimeter, a truly real-time dosimeter, a global unique system, a patent system. The only system that can measure and separate at the same time the different type of radiation, with unique characteristics. A system that is be able to be handled on a laptop, iPhone, or tablet. The user can monitor the information on that. We are a strong team, complementary team, having strong research background as well business background. We have strategic partners from NASA, ESA, DLR, and already establishment and distribution channel. We have advisors from NASA, DLR, Lockheed Martin, and Eng. We are addressing in a large, diverse, and global market of $58 billion today, with the annual increasing of 7%. According to the predictions, the active dosimeter systems, the market for the active dosimeter system, is planning to be $22 billion according to 2022. According to the same predictions, the active dosimeters is the future and is the correct timing to be invested on that. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Marina, thank you very much for your invitation. It's nice to see some familiar faces amongst you. My name is George Haliotis. I am the CEO of Mediline Isothermal Solutions USA. We are not actually a startup because we were founded many years ago back in Greece, but we are working as a startup here in the US. What we do is we do insulated zippers for the safe transportation of thermosensitive drugs, pharmaceuticals for the pharma market. The problem on the market is that most of our competitors are making molded products, molded zippers. And these zippers are hard to transport because you are transporting air and very uneconomical to store. We created back 15 years ago a very special design where we do not use molds for our insulation, yet we cut it. We create this so-called puzzle zipper, 6 different sizes where we can create a box and then be able to store economically, transport economically, and also be very customized according to the needs of our customers. The global market is very big, is approximately going to be by 2025 over $12 billion. And we have already raised the funds we need in order to start it, to start being here in the US. A little bit about us. We have been founded back in 1997 from our founder and investor, Mr. Dontis, in Greece, Athens, Greece. 2013, we have a second production facility in Constantinople, Turkey. And 2018, we entered here the US market, trying to serve our customers, which you can see a lot of them, big pharmaceuticals companies like Novartis and all the rest here in the US market. What we are mainly seeking is contacts, especially not only in the big pharma where we already have, but in the smaller companies, clinical trial companies, smaller pharmaceutical companies where we can help them as they do not need to invest a lot to have their products delivered. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, everyone. My name is Apostolos Atsalakis, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pnoe. Pnoe is a breath analysis device that tells you how to eat, how to train, and how healthy your heart and lungs are. Breath analysis is widely accepted as the most accurate way of prescribing personalized nutrition, workout plans, and also screening in a non-invasive way the cardiovascular and pulmonary health of an individual. However, the biggest problem of breath analysis today is undeniably the limited access to the measurement. Our proprietary-owned technology has solved this, as our product PNOE that you can see on the slide is 10 times less expensive than competition, is very user-friendly, and through our cloud-based solution, we're doing the heavy lifting of analyzing the results for our users. So far, we have seen a lot of interest from the fitness market, and we're already selling our product in fitness centers, nutritionists, professional teams, universities, and many more. In fact, we're fortunate enough for being already trusted by leading institutions globally, like the MIT Media Lab that we're here today, by Exos, who is the largest provider in corporate wellness in the US, by TB12, and many more who are already PNOE users. Our team has currently achieved to reach annual revenues of $2.5 million, which is actually our annual run rate. And we're doing this by selling our hardware with a profit margin of more than 70%, and also by selling our analysis services. The fitness market that we're currently tackling has a revenue potential of $4.7 billion annually, and we are already in talks with the market leader in order to penetrate the medical market. So far, our team, since our product launch 10 months ago, has managed to build a healthy business as we're currently cash flow positive. We have raised more than $4.2 million in funding, and currently we're closing the funding round that we began at the Y Combinator's demo day, and we're seeking for another $1.5 million. The founding team of PNOE consists of me and Panos, that we bring on board experience in product development, and we're fortunate enough to collaborate with 13 other talented individuals. If you want to learn more about PNOE and what we do, just talk to me after or send me an email. Thank you.
Good afternoon from my end. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a true honor for me to be here. And thank you too so much for the inspiring discussion earlier. So I am Vangelis Papas. I am a professor of medical physics in the University of West Attica in Athens and the founder of RTSafe. Actually, MIT is like a family to us because RTSafe was the first prize winner during the first MIT Enterprise Forum competition back in 2015. So let's see in brief what RTSafe does. So RTSafe actually improves the quality of life and potentially prolongs the life of brain cancer patients by enhancing the safety and efficiency of their radiation treatments. So we are doing that actually by harnessing the combined added value of 3D printing and gel radiation dosimetry. So we have introduced globally the concept of individualized care in radiation oncology. And in few words, for every patient that has a brain tumor, RTSafe can build in 2 working days a perfect replica of that patient in terms of interaction with radiation. So we are building actual human heads, and we are calling them pseudo-patients. They are having skin, bone structure, and soft tissue that mimics the true patient that interacts with radiation and detects radiation. So at the end of the day, we are mailing the pseudo-patient to the clinic, and the medical staff can do all the tests, the actual treatment, as if it is the living patient, fine-tune and improve the whole treatment for these patients. And these patients are more than 4 million per year globally that they can benefit from our technology. They can experience a personalized quality assurance for the treatment. More or less, the market is around 7 billion. And so far, we are the first and only company that offer this service. Our patents are granted in US, Europe, Australia, and China so far. Recently, we're really happy to be 510K FDA cleared. It's only a few months ago. And we also recently made a very significant partnership with a company that holds the 40% of the global market of the linear accelerators that do the treatments. So very soon, we are going to be, one of our solutions is going to be in the product catalog of Elekta. So we are having very well-known customers in US, in Europe, Argentina, Australia, Singapore so far. And we have more than 60 publications on this field. We're very well accredited. We have investors from Europe so far, mainly. And very significant partners, the top are Elekta and UT Health, MD Anderson in San Antonio. ArtiSafe has a subsidiary in San Antonio, Texas, and in Athens, Greece, the holding company is in Ireland. So right now, because of the contract with Elekta and because of their recent FDA clearance, right now is the time to ask for significant funding towards supporting this important news for us. As I usually say, so far, we have successfully walked the road from 0 to 1. And right now is the time to use the right funds and the right belief in our social vision and then financial vision towards going from 1 to the sky and support each and every brain cancer patient, so all of the 4 million patients per year that can benefit from our technology. Thank you so much for your attention.
So we've gotten a little bit late. So instead of Q&A, please find the speakers during the networking event after. As you can see, Greek startups take lots of shapes and forms, headquartered here or there, founders who are born here or there, leveraging resources here and there. So we hope you have a sense for the technical talent and the entrepreneurial spirit that is changing the shape of Greece today and providing a really hopeful, bright light within this country. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you found some things that were of interest to you, and please make sure to find the speakers afterwards.